Hi everyone, I'm back. I'm back to do more science versus bullshit. I'm gonna do my usual check that I'm actually live. Not yet, or I'm looking in the wrong place. Dashboard? No. Post? No. Home? No. Website? Oh. Well, not much has changed since Oh, this looks different. Ah, I'm live. Okay, great. I still have that slight issue of I am very today. I actually have tons that I've been collecting, so if you are someone who has sent me something over the Christmas break, um, then I have noted it, and I will be covering it, but today I'm just gonna cover 3 things. Let me get them up. Actually, one thing might surprise you 'cause I think it probably comes across that I'm quite anti-supplements, which isn't a complete lie. But I'm only anti-supplements that don't work, which I think is fair enough. I don't want you to waste your money. But there are some that I'm like, okay, maybe." So one of them will probably surprise you that I'm like, wouldn't quite say pro, but not anti, and there's a little bit of research behind it. So I do have a lot to get through, but, I think this is more important than ever because it feels to me, and I don't know if this is just, like, because people send me so much stuff now to go through, or if it because it's theory that it genuinely is this way, but there seems to be more and more absolute crap and people trying to sell you stuff than ever before, and I am for like 15 years, which is a long time, right? So I see these things all the time, and this is worse than what I've ever seen it, and I think the reason is previously, back in my you might get basically, if you were promoting supplements, it was usually because you were quite good, like, sponsored athlete or something, right? And you'd get, like, a 10% discount code, and maybe you'd get some free supplements, and you'd normally have to do, like, modeling shoots for free, and, like, this was, like, a kind of, like, prestige thing, right? So there wasn't a huge amount of buyers because as much as you were, like, maybe making a little bit of money, like, no one was making much money. Now, that is completely different. Like, influencers are all making thousands of pounds, if not tens of thousands of pounds. Some people, like mini celebrities, will be making hundreds of thousands of pounds promoting this stuff. And then when you look at people who've actually built a business, like, so for example, Will Powders or something, you're talking like tens of millions of pounds in bias, essentially, like, to promote these stuff to make you think that you need something. So when people kind of, will, I don't know, um equate, say, my opinion, the opinion of someone who's paying hundreds of thousands of pounds to promote something, like, it really seem fair. Like, I am literally making nothing from doing this. All I'm trying to do is save you money so that you don't get conned. But I would be very, very skeptical because I don't think this will stop, probably, like, get worse, which is why bullshit is so important and why, like, debunking these things is so important. Um so that you don't waste thousands of pounds from marketers who are preying on your insecurities, especially if you're a middle-aged woman. So much of this is focused on, preying on insecurities, convincing problems that you don't have, trying to sell people on almost like they really care, and that's why they create products. All of it is, not true. So be very skeptical, always ask for evidence, and if you're not sure about a supplement, run it past me first, or see if I covered it on Science Versus Bullshit, and then invest that money so you can actually make money work for you, which is my new thing. Imagine all the money you save on buying collagen or athletic greens or I don't know, just a ton of supplements that you don't need. Like, people are spending hundreds of pounds on supplements that they don't need. If they invested that instead, even in a general index fund, they'd be doing really well, like really, really well, and they'll look back in 10 years and I listened to Emma on that, and now I'm hundreds of thousands of pounds. That's what can happen. Um, and then to be clear on this, I wanna and hopefully this will come across in this episode specifically, I'm not anti-supplement. supplements. There are a few that I've been asked about, okay, maybe one that I've been asked about today that I'm like, "Oh, this is quite interesting." Still wouldn't do it myself, but it's quite interesting. My whole point behind doing this is to give you the evidence behind it, to apply that to real world, to relate some of the science, because a lot of what's happening is there is a science that has been basically, massively overhyped and then usually put in a completely different context, and the example today is actually quite a good example of this. And then you can decide based on that information, "Hey, this is the right thing for me," or, "No, I don't wanna spend my hard-earned money on this." And that's kind of the whole point of it. Okay, so today we're gonna go over MCT, which I've been asked about that quite a few times, mushroom gummies, which I've been asked about a lot, so there must be some kind of like TikTok trend or something going on about them, and then ketones that I have, been asked about a few times before, but this was a specific ketone drink, so I'm gonna go over that. So the first one was, "Hello, would you do a post on MCT powder? I've been purchasing it for a few years, helped change myself, especially having cravings. However, my cholesterol came back high, quote unquote, sorry, not quote, in brackets, the bad one. And although there's information about how there's no such thing as bad cholesterol, information is in just appreciates the honest advice you always get here, whether it's safe or not long term. I have 2 to 3 coffees a day with MCT, 30 grams of MCT a day. Okay, 30 grams of MCT a day, okay. I eat a balanced diet, 2 meals a day, and a healthy snack. This is ideal for my body and works for me. Exercise when I can, as I'm a single parent and a student. Is it worth the money and the hype? I'm 40 years old, I have no health conditions, and the cholesterol came high after fasting and having MCT coffee. I went for second bloods with no MCT coffee and cholesterol came back fine. Thank you." Okay, so totally get why you're confused here. The messaging in this area is really, really confusing. So the idea that there's no such thing as bad cholesterol is not true. Like, there is bad cholesterol. It's LDL cholesterol. There's a little bit of nuance to that, like, on this level, I've done other episodes to kind of delve into this a little bit further, but on this level, let's just say LDL cholesterol, this is a causal risk factor for cardiovascular disease. So there is a ton of research on this, research on this. MCT oil, especially when mixed with saturated fat, like it is in Will Powder's supplements, which often have, like, a high amount of coconut and, butter, I think, or grass-fed butter or whatever it is that they're using. But anyway, the point being it's very high in saturated fat. That's something that I would avoid taking because excessive saturated fat is linked to higher levels of LDL cholesterol, which is something that, yes, you should be avoiding. Your question about, like, is it safe long term? Is it worth the money? Like, I'm gonna be totally honest here. For most people, taking MCT oils is, like, generally fine. I don't think there's gonna be much benefit to you. I wouldn't be overly concerned about, the of it. It's just not something that I would spend my money on, and I think gonna come on to be much better ways for you to do this. So the strongest kind of, quote, unquote, "benefit" that people feel is appetite control, because adding fat to your coffee can blunt hunger and make fasting easier. But there's quite a big but here, right? If you're having 30 grams a day, that's about 270 calories based on the fact that it's like fat. Like, the kind of a side note to the cholesterol, which I'm actually slightly less worried about because you saw a high reading and then you stop taking it and you immediately saw a low reading. It's, like, less concerning. It's not something that I would still promote 'cause you don't want, if you're taking that every day, then you're gonna have elevated levels every day, which over time is not going to be a positive thing. Um, but even if we just take that aside and we look at having 30 grams of fat essentially added to your diet, 270 calories. If you're looking at the appetite suppressing effects, I am willing to bet that eating something else, you could have like a 20 grams of protein in the form of chicken and salad, for example, which is probably gonna make you more satiated and be better for your general health than just adding fat to your coffee. Um, so I I mean, that would be my stance on that. I'd maybe test out, not doing that, seeing how you feel on it. Partly because these calories are pure fat, they're mostly saturated fat. Most people are probably consuming too much saturated fat already. It's actually, as much as people say it's actually quite a low satiating, so, like, actually the coffee, like, if you're having black coffee with MCT oil in it, which is kind of gross in itself, but anyway, if you're having that, you could just have the black coffee and then you eat those calories, which would certainly be my preference and what happens for my clients. So just remember that just 'cause it's a supplement, it's not, like, free of calories, and you might actually be better eating something for general health, energy, satiety, et cetera. Um, so I guess my point on that is based on this situation, I would personally stop taking MCT oil, especially given the blood markers, although it's slightly less worrying, or it's a good sign that they were, quite acute high levels and that they came back to normal. But from a nutritional standpoint, like, MCT oil is fat calories in liquid form, and not something that I would want to add to my diet, especially not when they're blended with, like, coconut oil and butter. It's a lot of saturated fat, and most people could do with having less saturated fat. In fact, to me, it seems quite insane to be supplementing with saturated fat. Same argument is true for electrolytes, when most people are consuming too much salt already. The fact that people are supplementing with adding more to their diet, to me, seems quite insane unless there's a very good reason for doing that, and in this case, I don't see that there is. So those are my thoughts. Would I be overly concerned about low cholesterol, like, now, assuming that you're gonna stop doing this? No, I don't think you should be, like, overly alarmed, but it's not something that will continue long. Okay, next question. Sorry. I'd love to know what you think of mushroom gummies being pushed hard on Instagram. Okay, there must be something. I've actually not seen that many ads that are targeted, probably because 'cause I've said it out loud now, my phone will hear it and I'll get sent more. Anyway, I'm gonna break this into, like, 2 things, because I think these 2 things are important. One, there is research around various forms of I'm gonna talk about that, and some of that I actually think is quite interesting. Only from a geeky standpoint, not really from a, "I think this would have, like, a substantial effect on people's standpoint," but still quite interesting. And then the second is these mushroom gummy products, because that's where a lot of the issue comes, and, they're taking some research which is still, like, quite a small effect, but preliminary and not strong enough really to merit the claims being made. On top of that, they're massively underdosed, and sometimes they're not even talking about the same ingredients. So, um, the first point we'll talk about is the research around mushrooms. The evidence is pretty modest, um, but to be clear, there is some research behind it, right? So you can't just be like, "Oh, these are absolute bullshit," but the claims made are absolute bullshit. So there's often claims like, "This will balance your hormones." That is not true. These will, quote, unquote, "fix cortisol." That is not true, although there are some that are related to potential, reductions in stress, but none that I have found that have actually shown a reduction in the level of cortisol. Not that actually I think you would particularly want them, but still, you can't make that claim. Did it rewire your brain? Again, that is certainly not happening. And did it boost energy without caffeine, but is similar to the level of effect of caffeine? That's not something I buy into either, nor have I seen any evidence that it would be of, a similar impact. So there are still some potential benefits. So some of the most ones, and there are actually, like, numerous forms of mushrooms that have different potential benefits. I've just picked out some that I think are interesting, the most research behind them. So one of the most common is lion's mane, and this has a potential quite small benefit for cognitive function and mood. The research that shows the strong benefit is usually in older adults or people with, like, some kind of mild cognitive impairment. And like I said, the effects are small, and you need to be doing the correct doses, which is kind of where the claims around these gummies come in, which actually generally are massively underdosed. So you need to actually be taking the correct doses and you should be taking this for, like, weeks and months to see a benefit, not just, like, what some people say, where you just see an influencer being like, "I took this one gummy, and then 5 minutes later, I felt like I could concentrate for hours and hours, and it completely cured my ADHD." Like, that's not happening. So bear that in mind. But to be fair, there is a small amount of evidence, but this is normally what happens is there's a small amount of evidence, usually in a completely relevant population, and then they'll translate that to like, "Oh my god, it's great for everyone, and we should all be taking it, and it's not gonna change my life." Then there's another one, I don't know how to pronounce, I think it's Reishi or Reshi or anyway, similar to that. This is the one that's linked to a reduction in stress or a potential reduction in stress, and often claimed to be like a cortisol lowering supplement. No good evidence for this in humans. None that I've seen have actually tested cortisol levels, so not something I recommend. It's probably more of a placebo, and if I was going to take a supplement because I wanted to reduce my stress, I'd probably look at ashwagandha instead. And then there's cordyceps, and this one I actually find quite interesting, only because there's, like, some quite cool visuals behind it, right? So, there is evidence behind this and improved exercise performance. But before people get excited about this, 'cause normally, like, the wrong people listen to this stuff, improved exercise performance in older adults or in untrained populations, right? So these effects do not translate to people who are already fit and healthy and exercising a lot, which is normally where these products are sold and or at least promoted to. Because often, and it's a generalization, but usually true, people who are untrained tend not to care that much about exercise performance, shockingly, because they're not doing exercise. So to promote a supplement to that population that doesn't really care about that outcome from a marketing perspective makes no sense. But who you promote that supplement to is like a high rocks athlete or the marathon runner or something like that. And then you're kind of taking this evidence in a completely untrained population and then you're applying it to the completely population, which is actually seeing benefits. But what is quite interesting about this is the mechanism as to why. So when you see in the untrained population this improvement in exercise performance, the part I find quite interesting is there seems to be a slight benefit in utilization and in VO2. So there, I guess there's some kind of interaction, and it doesn't look like it's that obvious in research exactly how this is happening, where you use oxygen slightly more efficiently on a cellular level, and that improves your VO2 and your VO2 max, and then potentially time to fatigue. Now, as I said, this is done in like older populations, untrained populations where aerobic efficiency is actually low, mitochondrial function, remember the powerhouse of the cell, is relatively low. So even quite small improvements would have like potentially like a noticeable impact on your performance outcomes, and arguably kind of more important. So you might get someone who's very untrained, able to get less out of breath up the stairs, for example. But what's not going to happen is someone who's already running marathons is going to improve their marathon time by taking this, which is kind of what's being promoted, and that is not going to happen. So in trained individuals, those systems like the efficiency of oxygen, the efficiency of your mitochondria, um, they're already very high because you're highly trained. So you're not going to see a benefit of something like this. So the analogy I quite like for this is kind of like putting like a match on a bonfire, like a small stick on like a massive flame. It's like it's going to make absolutely no difference. Whereas if you're very untrained and you have no fire at all, then it's like, oh, if you light a match, that might make some kind of difference. And then the other area that there might be some benefit is like the I guess this is the mitochondrial function. Potentially you can produce more ATP, which is the source of energy, which is again where you're seeing a lot of the claims around people saying that this could improve your energy. In trained athletes, ATP turnover and mitochondrial density is already very high, so you're gonna see anything from that. You see this kind of claim in so many areas, but, like, I often see it in insulin sensitivity, often around claims around things like sauna use. So, "Oh, sauna use will improve your insulin sensitivity," and then when you look at research, if they ever do give you any research, it's usually done on, like, very sedentary type 2 diabetics who have very poor insulin sensitivity already, and then anything that's pushing them out of their homeostatic range, i.e. pushing their body into, for example, a very hot environment, is gonna improve their insulin sensitivity versus someone who's already fit and healthy and already has high insulin sensitivity, absolutely no effect on them because you're putting a match onto a bonfire, you know? So yeah, I thought it was like, I mean, they're kind of interesting. There also might be slight effects or antioxidant effects. Um, Again, probably not in highly trained people, but this is something that I've used with 2 clients who wanted to try this, both with chronic fatigue syndrome. One who was a couple of years post-cancer treatment is still getting, cancer-related fatigue. Um, there seems to be a small benefit to them, or they seem to feel like there is. So again, like, it's worth trying if you're in that kind of bracket, and you've tried all the other things, and obviously if you're, depending on, what treatments you're going through, you've spoken to, like, the relevant doctors and said that you're taking this, then it could be something that might be worth trying. But if you're already training, you already have good mitochondrial density and efficiency, and you well, and then you're really not gonna see any benefit to this kind of supplement. And then there are other forms of, mushroom which I've not bothered to go into because those were the only ones with any even vague so yeah, that's the conclusion there. Now, actually back to the point, I was asked about the mushroom gummies, which I would strongly recommend people don't waste their money on. So as much as I've just said all of that, these tend to be, like, wildly underdosed. I looked at one that the person who asked this question sent me, and it didn't even say really what was in it. It said something like, mushroom blend or something, right? So you don't even know, like, what kind of ingredients in there or at what dose. So if you were gonna try supplementing with this, I would look at the correct dose based on the research. Examine doctors is a very good place to look that up, what's actually the effective dose based on research. And then I'd be testing taking that. I would avoid the gummies. Also, they're probably marked up massively as well. Usually you find this that if you just took the actual pure supplement and you just got like a basic supplement, you do this a lot with creatine, where you'll have like creatine gummies or creatine with added random shit. It doesn't really matter, but they can make more claims around it, or with a load of flavoring, or in a special pouch or something. Then you're gonna be charged a huge markup on it. Whereas if you're just like, I just want carbohydrate and I just want it at this dose, then generally you're gonna pay less for it and get a better outcome. So that's what I would be thinking if you were thinking of taking it, and I probably wouldn't. Oh, oh, I'm sorry that the sound, quality is bad. That's quite annoying. I'm well, I don't know what to do about that. Let's see what's going on. Gosh. Um, mm, mm. Right, tell me if it's so bad I should just stop or if it's actually worth doing, and I shall make a call on that because I guess we could, just record this as a podcast, but I'm halfway through now. Um, then why don't I have hmm, okay. Right, tell me, me too. It's not looking great. Maybe I'm struggling. Maybe I'll shut this one down today and I'll do another one, but that's very, uh, what else was I gonna look at here? Okay, well, maybe we'll have to redo for ketones next week, and I'm very sorry about that. I will try and get the better audio. Maybe it's recorded better, on the streaming platform I'm using, and then I'll for you. But thank you for the people that came live, 'cause there's a lot of people here live. I very much appreciate your time, and I will fix this for next week, I promise.